Good Friday morning, and thank you for being with us here on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Jason Hackett, and we have a few breaking stories this morning. Starting with this, former CNN anchor Don Lemon and local journalist Georgia Ford are both in custody. Right now, it's not clear why they were arrested, but the Justice Department did promise to pursue charges against Lemon and Ford after they covered a protest at a St. Paul church. In a video posted overnight, Ford said that federal agents were at her door and that she was being taken into custody, and that right now it does not feel like her First Amendment rights are being upheld. The protest was because its pastor allegedly works for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. 3 people, including civil rights attorney Nikema Levy Armstrong, protested the same church Lemon covered. They were also arrested. We just heard from Levy Armstrong last night.
They used 3 different sets of restraints on us as if we were hardened criminals and murderers. We had shackles on our ankles, we had belly chains around our waists, and we had handcuffs with bars in the middle.
The protesters say they believe the arrests were politically motivated because they offered to turn themselves in before they were arrested. The federal government claims they prevented people from practicing their religion in a place of worship. New this morning, Luigi Mangione will not face the death penalty for allegedly killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in December of 2024. A federal district judge made that decision this morning. Judge Margaret Garnett also ruled Friday to allow into Mangione's trial evidence recovered from his backpack at the time of his arrest. Law enforcement seized several items from Mangione's backpack, including a handgun, a loaded magazine, and a red notebook, key pieces of evidence that authorities have said tie him to the killing. Mangione's attorneys argued that evidence should be barred from trial, saying the search of their client's backpack was illegal because they had not yet obtained a warrant and there was no immediate threat to justify a warrantless search. This comes one day after a Minnesota man was charged with posing as an FBI agent to break Mangione out of jail. Federal investigators say 36-year-old Mark Anderson of Mankato came to the jail's intake Wednesday night saying he was a federal agent with paperwork to release an inmate. When he was asked for his credentials, court documents say he handed over a Minnesota license, threw numerous documents at them, and claimed to have weapons. Jail staff detained him, and court documents say they found this, a barbecue-style fork and a pizza cutter in his bag. New this morning, President Trump backing away from a planned drawdown of federal agents in Minnesota. This comes as a nationwide movement is underway to protest immigration enforcement. People across the country pledging not to shop, work, or go to school. So on Thursday, border czar Tom Homan admitted Operation Metro Surge has strayed from its initial focus. Going forward, Homan says the goal is to arrest undocumented people with an additional criminal record. Homan gave no timeline for when agents would fully withdraw. However, he said reducing their numbers relies on cooperation from local jails. But overnight, President Trump says there will not be a drawdown of federal agents in Minnesota.
If we get these agreements in place, that means less agents on the street. This is common sense cooperation that allows us to draw down on the number of people we have here. Yes, I said it. Draw down the number of people here.
Will you be pulling back immigration enforcement agents out of Minnesota?
We want to keep our country safe. We'll do whatever we can to keep our country safe.
So, yeah, pulling back?
No, not at all.
Homan promised ICE agents will be held accountable if they don't hold up standards of conduct. This weekend's demonstrations, no doubt, will put that to the test. And this morning, hundreds are gathering at the Whipple Federal Building. Community members demanding the charges against ICE observers get dropped. New overnight, President Trump reacting to this new video of Alex Preddy showing a confrontation with federal agents more than a week before he was shot and killed. He posted on Truth Social just after midnight saying, quote, Preddy's stock has gone way down with the video, calling Preddy an agitator and, quote, perhaps insurrectionist, saying the ICE officer was calm and cool, not an easy thing to be under those circumstances. Now, earlier this week, a lawyer representing the Preddy family sent us a statement saying, quote, nothing that happened a full week before could possibly have justified Alex's killing at the hands of ICE on January 24th. Well, calls were growing this morning for DHS to release a Columbia Heights preschooler. 5-year-old Liam Ramos and his father were detained last week shortly after leaving school. The two of them are being held inside a detention center outside of San Antonio. Texas Congressman Joaquin Castro, who visited Ramos this week, says he will be putting in a notice this morning to check on Ramos and the other children at the facility. Castro says he and his staff are very concerned, saying the child was very depressed, lethargic, and had not been eating well. We're live in D.C. right now, where a tentative deal to avoid a partial government shutdown has been reached, but likely won't be voted on by tonight's deadline. That would mean a lapse in funding for some government entities at midnight. The deal between Senate Democrats and the president will fund the majority of government services through September, except for the Department of Homeland Security.
We've gotten along very well. We're working on trying to get it to stay open.
To make sure that we rein in ICE appropriately and make it more professional.
Congress must stop them.
The deal splits off immigration reforms, adding 2 weeks of negotiations. If the Senate votes the bill through today, the House would take it up on Monday. The weekdown shutdown isn't expected to have major impacts, but more flight delays could be coming if it lasts any longer. Just in this morning, President Trump has announced on Truth Social he will nominate former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh as the next Fed chair. Trump has been weighing choices for several months to take over for Fed Chair Jerome Powell. His term expires in May. Developing this morning, we're learning a Kansas man has been indicted by a federal grand jury for allegedly threatening to kill Representative Ilhan Omar. The 60-year-old is accused of posting threats to Facebook last week. He later told agents the posts were his way of, quote, venting. This comes after an attempted attack on Omar during a town hall on Tuesday night. Anthony Kazmarchek is now facing federal and state charges. Court documents say he forcibly assaulted, opposed, intimidated, and interfered with Omar when he lunged towards her with a syringe. He was taken into custody on third-degree assault charges. He's also facing charges of terroristic threats and fifth-degree assault. Right now, there have already been a lot of shakeups in the governor's race, with notable candidates dropping out. 7 people are going to take their shot at trying to become the state's next governor. With Senator Amy Klobuchar's announcement yesterday morning, experts say it's cleared the Democratic field. There are 5 Republican candidates facing Klobuchar: Lisa Damuth, Kendall Qualls, Scott Jensen, Kristen Robbins, and Mike Lindell. U of M political science professor Catherine Pearson says voters will be looking at candidates' thoughts on ICE operations here in Minnesota.
Voters will definitely be looking for candidates to be discussing and talk about. I mean, it is a very challenging time in Minnesota. And so I think voters will be looking to hear from candidates on both sides of the aisle about their reactions to that and about how Minnesota moves forward.
Entrepreneur Mike Newcomb is running as an independent. Pearson says defeating Klobuchar will be tough for anyone because she's popular, experienced, and typically does better statewide amongst Republicans and independents than other Democratic candidates. Also breaking out of Centerville this morning, a garage is destroyed after fire tears through it overnight. Centerville is about 30 minutes north of Minneapolis near Lino Lakes. So this is the scene around 1 a.m. The fire chief tells us crews arrived within 6 minutes of the call and the garage was completely engulfed. They said they were able to knock it down quickly and kept it from spreading into the house. Thankfully, everyone inside was able to get out, and then they switched to keeping their crews safe.
This weather is up against us. When we fight fire in this weather, things freeze. It's like a skating rink out here. So again, it's just extremely important to make sure we're taking care of our people, making sure they're not slipping, getting hurt.
The fire chief says no one was injured, but as you can see, a truck in the driveway was destroyed. Right now, the cause is under investigation. We have some breaking Olympic news this morning. Skiing legend Lindsey Vonn crashed just hours ago in her final downhill race before the Winter Games. These are brand new images into the newsroom after it happened. You can see her holding her knee there. The crash left her tangled in the safety nets, but she was able to ski the rest of the way down. We just checked the U.S. ski and snowboard team's X account, and they say she's being evaluated. We'll be sure to update you when we know more. Hopefully it isn't too serious. Well, make sure you get your real ID ready. Full enforcement at airports begins this Sunday. And if you don't have an acceptable form of identification, you're going to need to pay a fee to get on your flight. Megan McPherson is at MSP now with all the details.
Yeah, good morning. Beginning this Sunday, traveling here at MSP without a real ID could cost you. That's because the TSA is implementing a new fee process called Confirm ID in order to verify the identities of passengers before they pass through security. And if you don't have one of their accepted forms of ID, this process is going to cost you a little bit of a fee. It's a $45 fee that they are now implementing. Want to show you a visual of how this works. They recommend that you complete this process before coming to the airport. You'll go to tsa.gov, pay a $45 fee, as I mentioned, and then print your receipt to show to security agents. That is good for 10 days. If you wait until you're already here at the airport, you will have to step out of the security line, scan a QR code, and pay online, and then start back over at the back of the line, which on busy travel days like today is not something that most people want to do. TSA says that most travelers won't be affected by this change, but the agency does hope that this new process pushes the rest to finally get a real ID.
You see about 94-95% of passengers here at Minneapolis-St. Paul either have a real ID or another acceptable form of ID. I think those people, they're not going to be impacted by this change. They won't have to pay the fee. It really won't impact operations for them. It's that small population that's kind of been dragging their feet on this that we're trying to encourage to get in compliance.
Also know that just over 50% of Minnesotans have a real ID, so there's still some work to be done to get to that full 100%. Probably might not even ever get there. But I also wanted to mention that I just went through this process myself, went to the DMV earlier this week, having just moved here in the last couple of weeks. It's a pretty painless process, I would say. You do have to pay that fee, but definitely worth it to avoid the hassle here at the airport and potentially save you some time too. Back to you.
New numbers this morning show MSP topped 36 million passengers in 2025. That's actually a 3% drop compared to 2024. MSP says they continue to see major international growth, with international passengers topping 3.6 million last year, or 10% of all passengers. Make sure you stick with us. More news and weather coming up after the break.